how passionately I advocate for betas to accept their natural place, understand they'll never be able to please a woman.
Hey everyone, it's your elite QoS, Lady Anaconda, coming to you with an amazing interview with the voice of the BNWO King Dom. Because, of course, as the elite QoS, I know it's my responsibility to not only elevate Black voices, but to ask the questions that we all have and go right to the source and learn about not just the cuckolding world, not just the BNWO network, but sexuality from the perspective of a Black king who's in the kink world today. And we get into a lot of amazing conversations during the next 2 hours. So definitely follow all of our media. House of Anaconda, especially, is going to have all the resources for the different Black content creators and Black owned businesses that we follow and work with. So enjoy the conversation, and I'm sure you're going to learn something. Hello, everyone. It's your elite QoS Lady Anaconda, and I'm here today with a very special guest, King Dom, and he is the voice of the BNWO. And I am just so privileged to be able to pick his brain a little bit today, ask him a few questions, and really, get the inside track on the BNWO and what it is to be, an ally QoS that tries to support. Um, Black superiors, Black owned businesses, so we're going to talk about quite a few different things today. So thank you so much for being here with me today, King Dom.
Thank you for having me, Lady A. It's good to talk to you again. We've spoken on many occasions. Good to be on your platform. Shout out to everybody. For those of y'all who don't know, my name is King Dom, or your God, King Dom, the voice of the BNWO. And we're here. We're going to be talking about a lot of cool things. So shout out to my whole family, the BNWO family, Sir Goldie, my boy After Dark, Pharaoh, Saint Sarah, my kitty. I love you. So we here.
Yeah, I'm just so privileged truly to be able to interact, with all of you. And I definitely hope to be able to have a few more of your fam on here to really just
Yeah,
continue to
definitely.
flesh out what the BNWO is. And if you wouldn't mind for our viewers, if you could give us a little bit of an idea, what it means to you, what it is that you are building, because of course you and I know that BNWO was unfortunately, especially back in the Tumblr days, something that these white submissives, whether they identified as, cuckolds or sissies or any of that in between, were trying to dictate this world of BNWO, which of course is completely hypocritical. That doesn't make any sense. So if you would speak to that a little bit, I'd appreciate it.
No, definitely. Always kind of starting from the beginning. For those of y'all who don't know, the BNWO stands for the Black New World Order, right? And as Lady A was saying, back in the early days of Tumblr, it was really prominent as far as like caption porn. But
Mhm.
most of those narratives that came out were from white submissives, sissies, cucks, everything in between, as she said. And there's nothing wrong with that, but the traditional way things have gone within this country usually is at the cost of Black people being exploited and white people being able to profit off of it. And the BNWO is no different. When you look at the adult entertainment industry, there's a lot of marginalized Black people of all different shades, colors, and also orientations. And one thing that has become prevalent is that the Black man, the straight Black man, is kind of put at this pedestal of, the ultimate being, which in theory is very flattering, right? You're supposed to be like this god, this beast, this monster, something that other men aspire to be, right? But the flip side of it is the reality of it is it's very exploitative, especially when it's not Black people dictating it. And what happens is Black men that usually get involved with the BNWO, they kind of get top from the bottom. Right. If you look at some of the
Right.
QoS and the cuckolding scenarios that some people will explain on some of these forums that are very much focused on cuckolding lifestyles, on interracial sex and race play and things of that nature, there are a lot of black men who are very vocal on, the treatment that they have to endure. So, for one thing that we came up with the BNWO was not just bringing respect back to the black man in this dynamic, but also uplifting the black woman, because within our community we can't have black men without black women, so they both are equally as important. And
Absolutely.
when Saint Sarah approached me about making the BNWO a company and a brand, I instantly said yes. It wasn't even a question, right? And from that point on, we've just been hell bent on reestablishing the BNWO as black superiority, right? The identity of black superiority and being dictated by black people. And it's our word,
Exactly.
it's our decision, it's our structure. And this is what it means to be under black superiority. You have to have black people writing that narrative. And does that mean that all the narratives that were put out there before are, now invalid? No, but we are determining now whether or not we accept certain things, how certain things are going to go. Um, and for me, the BNWO now, what it means now is it's a black revolution. It's black sexual liberation for people of all orientations: straight, bi, gay, transsexual, non-binary, non-gender conforming. So many times, with even within our own community, the black community can be so stifling for black sexuality. So for me, this is the safe haven. This is the black Illuminati. This is the black sexual culture, the black sexual renaissance. And we're going to make sure that we put black sexuality in the forefront in a depiction that we feel puts us in the best light, as opposed to it just being about our bodies. You know what I mean? So to me, it's very important. It's something dear to my heart. And it's something that I'm eating, sleeping, and breathing now.
That's wonderful. Yeah, it's definitely something that, again, I feel so honored to be able to support, be able to learn about, be able to be a part of, in any sort of way. St. Sarah, especially, I've been so honored that she's reached out to me and, tries to get me involved in certain things so that I can use my voice, not just as a QoS, but at the end of the day, as a privileged white woman to direct attention to Black voices and, as you said, to the reclaiming of the BNWO to be black owned, black operated, black focused, that's the priority. Absolutely. For
Right.
people that don't know, a lot of what we were talking about, the caption adult content that came out for a long time, a lot of it had to do with this idea of cuckolding, but
Mhm.
for these white couples, the woman would specifically only cuckold her husband with a black man, but in what regard was that black man being actually respected, actually obeyed, actually supported, especially outside the bedroom? That called in a lot of questions to how are you going to say that you worship, respect, adore, any of the black superiors, and you're not going to actually support black causes. Make sure
Right.
to actually be submissive to the black man. Again, that topping from the bottom thing. A lot of these cuckold husbands were and still do try to top from the bottom, to try and get their kinks. And certainly for myself, I've had to work with a lot of women to get them to realize their power, in the
Right.
dynamic to
Exactly.
direct it properly. I'm definitely curious your um, interactions with other Black superiors when you talk to them about this fetish sphere and kind of what different opinions that you get on it, because I know that, as you were saying, there's already been such a suppression of freedom of sexual exploration in the Black community. And I mean, I know for a fact that Findom makes any kink space like you feel like you're a little more in control because you're really being financially,
Right.
you know, uh,
Compensated for the
prioritizing,
most part.
yeah,
Right.
compensated, and you're prioritizing, that interaction to at least feel like your time is being valued. But yeah, I'm just definitely curious what kind of interactions you've had with other Black superiors, talking to them about, this different, kink world that exists now.
Well, there's many different levels to it. The most superficial is just like the curiosity and like bewilderment. This like,
Mhm.
wow, stuff like this exists. Like, are you serious? Black people
Right.
are into stuff like this, and one of my goals has always been to help Black people get at least introduced to kink and BDSM, not be so adverse. Because usually what comes up is, it's white people shit. Like, oh, whips, chains, slaves, automatically for any other black person, it's like, I don't even think I really want to hear about this. This is already kind of too traumatic, right? And this is what it means to live the black experience. There are so many different aspects of westernized society that bring you back to that moment of we aren't in control. We don't have a say so, right? So in theory, submission in general is just something that a lot of black people probably have a problem with. And I can understand that. I've dealt with it myself, but now what I'm realizing is depending on the level of your sexual enlightenment, for lack of a better term, you're either bewildered and befuddled or you're interested,
Mhm.
either very interested or you're curious. And the
Right.
curiosity is probably usually the most interesting conversation because you can see that they want to ask more, but depending on the setting, it's like, all right, there are people around me. I don't really want to bring too much attention to myself. Maybe I'm an undercover freak and I'm into some of these things. But what I've found recently online is that depending on the space that I'm in, people are definitely going to ask. People are definitely going to uh, question who's in control. How does this work? Um, what is the racial undertone? That's always something that comes up. And one thing that I've come up with that we're doing at the BNWO now is we're enforcing this terminology called SERP, which is consensual ethical race play. And the reason why we're doing that is there's definitely superiority to be taken into account. But we don't want the superiority to be oppressive and tyrannical from a outside looking in perspective. It can
Okay.
look like that from the inside, right? When you understand how things are going. But from the outside looking in, we want people to at least understand that everyone is here of their own free will.
It's all
Everyone
consent.
is
Exactly.
consenting and everyone has been informed in the consent. And that's a big thing for us because, again, it's not just a black and white thing. This is also very much so a black uh, accountability thing. So, as black men, we have to understand that one of the reasons why the topics that come up of blacks submission from black women is usually because of the disregard for the responsibility as a leader, right? As a leader in your community, a leader in your family, a leader in whatever you're doing as a black man, whether you are
Mhm.
straight, gay, bi, whatever the case may be, you're still a black man and a leader in that community. But sometimes we tend to only focus on the negative aspect of black men not being accountable, right? And that's usually coming up on a lot of these social media platforms. So what we're doing now is just again reinforcing accountability from the top down, and that will be a trickle down effect that improves everything for everybody. So if we are speaking about consent and I've told you, hey, I'm into maybe some type of race play, not the hardcore stuff, or I engage with it in this way,
Mhm.
if you would like to engage in the scene with me, these are my parameters, and that allows
Right.
everybody to have fun because we're not saying that white people are bad, right? Because that's usually one of the biggest contexts that people take from this is like, oh, you're only saying that black people are superior, it's reverse racism and all this other shit. No, we're saying within the kink and within the people that are practicing this lifestyle, this order, this is how things go. White people are here because they willingly want to be here and they want to serve in this way, shape, and form, dictated by black people. And black people are letting it be known that this is also what we want to do, and you're welcome to experience that as long as you're going and agreeing to our terms. So everybody
Mhm.
has to consent. If nobody's consenting, it doesn't go. And that's a big thing for us at BNWO is making sure that that informed consent is one of the things at our forefront because I think a lot of people just have this mindset in the vanilla space that kink and BDSM is just this free for all orgy where everybody is fucking everybody, and it's like,
Well, people think that I just go up to random white boys on the sidewalk and just beat them into submission
right,
non-consensually, you know, or that
right, yeah,
I hate all white people. And we both know that that's, you know, that's ignorant to say, because you're obviously not trying to even educate yourself about how important, how priority one consent is, whether it's an online conversation, you know, a one-on-one session, or, you know, something that is happening, you know, where you're physically in the same space, you know,
right,
involved in some type
exactly,
of fetish based or kinky, you know, interaction, for sure.
hundred
And it is
percent,
interesting that people don't realize, you know, the cause and effect of where this consent is coming from, where, you know, why these submissives are seeking out this space in the first place. It's this fetishization. Black people didn't start that. You know, the
right,
problematic issues that are happening, Black people didn't start that. So it's more, like
right,
you said, a reclaiming of the space to change the narrative, you know?
right. And also, again, in a lot of kink spaces, there are black kink spaces out there, but they're
Mhm,
far and few in between. More so when you start looking up like swinger parties, cuckolding parties, or anything of that nature. It's usually held by white people. And again, that just is the case. We're not saying that's a bad thing, but what we're saying is it's hard to understand how to accommodate black people if you don't have that experience, right? What are we trying to do in a kink space where there are maybe, let's say, 12 white couples and then one
mhm,
black couple comes in? You're going to kind of stick out like a sore thumb. And then what happens unintentionally is, if you do have this attraction, this obsession, this lust, this love, however you want to articulate it, for black people in that sexual space, it then can become overwhelming. And I believe that women can understand this when there are just too many guys that are just like, oh my God, she's hot. And now everybody's just kind of like picking you apart like a piece of meat.
yeah,
And some people get off on that, right? We're not shaming that. We're not saying that that's not the case, but let's make sure that everybody feels comfortable first, especially within this space that can be very intimate, right? That can be very uh jarring for someone that's never been through it before. Let's make them feel comfortable. That way we can get more of the real, raw them that maybe they're trying to discover. And I think that that can be done with making everybody feel safe. And it's hard. And I'm going to be honest. I feel that it's hard to do for uh, people who don't share that black experience. Like, I can't expect you to throw a sex party that is totally conducive to black kinksters,
of
because
course.
you only have a certain level of understanding, right? Same thing for me. I can't fully throw like a slut party as a man, because I'm going to give you
Yeah,
what I want, right? Now
yeah,
if you're into
of
that, you're
course.
into that, right? But
Right. I
at
I know
its
for me, that
core,
sounds great.
right? You know
I'm
what I
like,
mean? But
"Please host a slut party."
right, right. But now, like, let's say if it's too intense for someone who's just kind of like coming into that sluthood, you don't
Mhm,
want to overwhelm them, right?
yeah,
Because then that can totally turn them off, and then that can be a traumatic experience. And I think we already associate so much traumatic stuff with sexuality. Why
yeah,
add to it? So again, start off on a fair basis where everyone is comfortable, uh, and then grow from there. And I think that allows even deeper exploration, even deeper connection with people, even if you're not fully attracted to that person or you're not into that person. Just
mhm,
the level of respect will like make you say, like, you know what? I want to be around you more. Because at least you
yeah,
understand me. You don't agree with me, maybe, but at least you understand me. And I think with what we're doing at BNWO is prioritizing that black space, that black sanctity of, you can be yourself here, even if we don't agree with what you're into, and everybody has their own kinks, their own fetishes. We can't sit here and say one thing is allowed and one thing isn't, except if it deals with non-consenting adults. That's the
yeah,
only thing that we prioritize. If it deals with non-consenting adults, we do not agree with it. Right? Consensual non-consent still has consent in it. So that means that if you're getting into the age play thing, right? That's not something that we condone because
Mhm.
now you're implying that that person isn't at that age range to make that consensual decision. So
Absolutely.
we again we're prioritizing safety here because we want people to feel safe, especially dealing with this black experience. Like I said, it's hard to even feel safe within your own community when it comes to your sexuality, unless you're kind of going with this grain of, you know, I like getting my dick sucked out. There's so many different things that black people have to go through, and it's hard for me to articulate it in a way that everybody will be able to understand. And that's why I love BNWO, because I don't have to do that in that instance. There, I'm really speaking to black people having a certain track record of this is what we go through on average.
Yeah.
Depending on how many people I talk to, men and women, out of 10 people, I would say 7 or 8 are going to say, I have a very similar experience, if not identical.
Hmm.
And especially when that experience is negative, to me, that's a problem. So that's why the BNWO being a black prioritized kink space is so important. And the privilege of being in that black prioritized kink space is even better for white people because now you're doing it knowing that you're doing it under the guise of what people want, as opposed to, like how we said in the Tumblr days, where you're putting your narrative out there, which is great, but that's always been the problem. It's always been the white narrative
Yeah.
being put out on the black story, as opposed to that narrative coming from an authentic place of this is what we really go through. So that's really what it is.
I'm so glad you said that too, especially because that's what I think people also need to realize is the BNWO is not about seeing black sexuality through a white lens, a white perspective. It's about black people reclaiming their sexuality and their sexual experiences, whatever that means to them, and that race play is is and can be a part of it, but at the end of the day, it's more important how Black people are choosing to express to each other, interact with each other, what they're into that may or may not have anything to do with race play, may not have anything to do with cuckolding or or even engaging with somebody that wants to talk about them as a black superior. Maybe that's not something that they even like to bring into their kink life. So
Right,
like
right,
there's also that understanding that at the end of the day, a black woman may feel like, well, in my kink I want to be a woman first, and what does that mean
agreed.
to me? And
Right,
and that's very powerful to realize, like, at the end of the day, like, we've had too many white safe spaces dictating everything, I mean, especially online. Um,
right,
like, you
exactly.
talk to
you
you
know,
talk to anybody on Twitch, you can't play COD without a bunch of racists just saying awful things, and that's just because of
right,
the problematic elements of, the white supremacy mentality, the white patriarchy mentality of just like, we're running the show thing. So, it is very transformative what you're doing, and it's just absolutely wonderful, and it's so important, to black
same
men,
here.
women, everything in between, however they identify. Because I'm also curious, because I know that you probably have like the sissy guys that message you. So like, what are your kind of your opinions about the the homophobia that may come about, in terms of people not really being comfortable with those types of kinks and kind of putting that in its place? Like, I guess I'm just a little bit curious because I know that I've talked to black superiors that are just super, super, super uncomfortable with this idea that you could be a heterosexual, straight man, but you might enjoy the domination play of having a sissy male, suck your dick. I'm not saying that you do, but I'm saying like that's something that's a part
Right.
of the
No, I
kink
get you.
community, and like but that you're not gonna go out and date a man, but you might enjoy dominating somebody who, you know what
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like, so I'm just
Yeah.
curious, like,
So
conversations you've had.
ironically, I was talking about this on the Stereo app maybe about an hour ago before we went on. So shout
Oh,
out to
no
the people
kidding.
that were listening there. Your God, the FNG over there. But for me, the interesting thing about this is that the hardest thing is kind of like erasing that straight stigma, that rigid straight stigma of black masculinity, right?
Right.
Now, to do this, you gotta kind of do it with tact, right? We're not saying that if you choose to be black and masculine and straight, that you're not a man, right? What we are saying is that all black men are black men, no matter who they are with, no matter who they choose to be with, whether that's women, whether that's men, whether that's trans, with whoever, right? You have the right to do that because that is your God-given right. That's your choice. Um, the thing for me is, how do we now teach people how to respect boundaries? Because what my personal experience with gay men has usually been, there's not a respect of the boundary of I respectfully decline, right?
Right.
I'm not into that, or I don't go down that way. I'm not attracted to men, whatever the case may be. And then there's always kind of like the coercion, like, why don't you try it? You don't know until you try. And that could be the case for some people, right? Curiosity will open the door, whether or not you're into something or not. But for me, or people like myself who are straight and know what they're into and don't have to question it, it's like respect that. And I think the beautiful thing that we've been able to do now is kind of like show that there is that respectable uh, ability to be cordial with each other, right? For us to
Mhm.
share space as black men of all orientations and just say, like, hey, you're into what you're into? Cool. I'm into what I'm into. Cool. Maybe we're into some of the same things. If we're not, that's respectable. And then we can negotiate things from there. And depending on your level of heterosexual sexability to your hetero flexibility, right? There are some guys that are hetero flexible, like you said, like they're not into men, but in the domination aspect,
Right.
they could get, orally pleasured by a man, and that
Mhm.
wouldn't really affect them. And that's the beautiful thing about kink, is that it allows you to really understand who you are to your core, and not necessarily put a label on it, but be able to articulate it to people that don't fully understand. And that's one thing that I've been able to find out. But to answer your question, when it comes to the white inferiority that approach me, the one thing that I've learned is that there are people that are very serious about this, and then there are people that are just kind of in it for the fantasy, for the quick
Oh yeah.
gratification. And
Mm.
you just really have to know how to handle who you're talking to. One thing that I preach to everybody, whether you are black superiority in the BNWO or just black superiority existing, is be firm on what you are about. So if you are a black man and you're interested in some of this stuff and you're straight, you set your boundaries, right? I don't have
Mhm.
sex with any of my male slaves,
Mhm.
right? Black or white. I have black submissives, I have white submissives. My black
Mhm.
submissives get treated totally differently than my white submissives, but my white submissives have to work extremely hard to be treated at the same level that my black submissives get, right? But that's how I do my domination, that's how I do my financial domination, and everything is goal oriented. One of my best subs is a white boy, and he's amazing. My poor little white boy, you know who the fuck you are. I love you. Shout out to
I
you.
think I know who
He's
you're
always
talking about because he's been on
You know
Moan
exactly what I'm
before.
talking about.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you guys follow me, you guys know who I'm talking about. But this is what I do. I show love to the people that are loyal, that are dedicated, that are disciplined, that are serious about what they're saying. And he is a true servant of the BNWO. And this is what happens when you serve properly. You get your shout out and you get your virtual pets. So,
Right.
hey, my boy. Hold on, let me get the hand up in there. Yeah, that's for you. Um, Giving him his virtual pets. But yeah, there's nothing but respect. There's nothing but acknowledgement of this is how we're going to interact with each other, and it becomes a beautiful thing because now there's a relationship there that benefits both sides mutually, and we have just only become more and more close as the times have gone by. And I speak to him almost every single day. um, he's very involved in a lot of stuff that I have going on business wise, and I tell him, I keep him up to date with a lot of things. And again, it's just great being able to have that connection, but understanding this is this is how I choose to interact with you, and it's great that you choose to interact with me in the same way. And now he's also growing as a person because he's understanding his sexuality and his desires and his things that really define him to his core. So it's just a great experience when you can do it respectably, and that's why we build everything on that informed consent, on that consensual ethical race play, on that cert, because it just makes it easier for everybody to have a good time.
Yeah. And you're really only going to get the most that you can get out of the dynamic, the dom sub dynamic and relationship, if you're actually, like you say, in it with the right mindset, actually putting your dominant, what's important to them, ahead of yourself, because then your dominant will know that you're not just using them as a placeholder to get your kinks off, that you're actually devoted to them specifically, to their
Mm,
cause specifically, to what's important to them specifically. And then, that dom has the responsibility to, interact with you as an individual, and not just, some random, because I know that we're familiar with the online space, especially Twitter, and there are a lot of guys that, a lot of time wasting, a lot of like slutty guys that just jump from dominant to dominant, trying to, get a different experience every night. And, depending on what you're into, you could do some pay to play and just, okay, well, pay me this and we'll have a little conversation. But you're not going to, neither person is going to really invest the time or the energy into building, that dynamic, that relationship, if you can tell that the person is just, there's a lot of women doms online, especially, that are just like, do not call me goddess. Do not just jump into my DMs and say
right.
mistress or goddess, or because you just call everybody that. You're not even addressing me by name, and that's certainly a frustrating thing that, you have to learn to navigate. But also, to your point, that you can tell right away if a submissive is in the correct mindset, truly has the respect, or if they are just indulging in their privilege to enjoy some fantasy time, for themselves. Because the people that are the white submissive specifically, that really understand um, the significance of the BNWO space, realize, that they might have some guilt or some frustration, that they are seeing the world through a clearer, lens, all of a sudden, to realize only really white people for a long time have even had the privilege to have this, the resources, the money, the time, the energy, the space to even enjoy fantasy play,
Agreed.
that, so that's a significant element, just to realize that, it's only been certain, few generations really, where Black families can really, build some wealth and really, have some time to just really enjoy themselves, and not be as focused on just trying to fight the system. But we're certainly still in that fight. Nothing's over, but nothing
Uh,
exists in a vacuum. You have to be, you can't just be surprised that somebody in the BNWO sphere doesn't want to pretend like those aren't real issues that are happening outside of the conversation, outside of the bedroom, outside of the dungeon, whatever. I think it all ties together. So it's really
yeah,
important to be conscientious of that.
I agree with you there because that tie-in to me is also a big part of it, right? Because I think it also extends outside of the kink, and this is where the connection for me is really important because Black culture is so unique and dynamic, and it's so uplifting for so many different people, but rarely is it Black people telling their own story. And I think that one of the easiest ways for us to kind of like shake some of these social shackles that we've been dealing with for so long is to address it from a sexual standpoint, because that seems to be the crux of where all of our discourse usually seems to be, right?
Mhm.
Black people aren't supporting Black trans, or Black people aren't supporting Black gays, and that's a very blanket statement that people can make when
Right.
there are millions of Black people that support both of these parties, right? There are millions of Black people in the LGBTQ community, but usually what happens within these sex spaces is it's straight people on one side, LGBTQ and everybody else on the other side, and it's like there's none of this. There's no people coming together. And I feel that the best way to create unity is to create unity within a space that we feel completely uncomfortable. And that's usually in the sexual space. And it even extends to the heterosexual community of Black people, where there's discourse between the value of Black men to Black women and vice versa, Black women to Black men. And the best way to do this is to kind of like reevaluate how we value each other sexually, especially if we're not in a mind state where being traditionally married, is kind of like the end goal. For a lot of people now, some people are questioning, do I want to be in a monogamous relationship? Am I poly or am I asexual? These are the questions of our time. And I think the more that we are aware of that and the more inclusive we are in that, we can then now move forward and go into what you were saying about the privilege that some white people understand that they have. The power within that is, if you really want to be considered an ally, you have to be able to work together, right? And I think that's one
Mhm.
thing that me and you have been able to show, is that there's a mutual level of respect, there's a mutual level of interest, probably attraction as well. I know on both sides there's definitely attraction, so that's neither here nor there. Gotta throw that in there, right? But there's definitely a respect of the work that we're trying to do on both sides. And I understand the value of having someone that can relate to someone that doesn't look like me, stand by my side and say, I understand what this person is saying. And I've always told you this. I've always felt I've always felt bad when I've seen the reaction that you've gotten from black women in the past. Because I know that it's like there's just a huge level of misunderstanding. And one of the first conversations that me and you even did have was addressing the issue of the Queen of Spades, right? The title of it. And especially knowing that there are a lot of black women who identify with this title, it becomes a very tumultuous conversation. But the beautiful thing that I've realized that we've been able to do in the conversations that we've had, both on my own and while I've had the conversation with you, is that we've been able to help black women understand it more. And I think
Mhm.
that there's just this huge cloud of misunderstanding from everyone when it comes to kink. And this also kind of goes into that topping from the bottom thing that we spoke about earlier, where it's the introduction of a lot of these terminologies is usually coming from white men who are getting their women into cuckolding, hot wifing, cuckoldressing, and all this stuff. And they're not giving all of the information. So yeah, it's like, yeah, you want to be with a black bull, and I'm a spade, and he's a bull, and all this. It's hyped up because he wants to get off on that. And again, there's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with that. But if you're going to do it the right way, and also do it to a way that everybody is getting some gratification out of it. If you're truly a submissive, if you're truly a cuck, know your place and let
Yeah.
the alphas, let the doms handle it, and you will have a great experience, especially if you are open with the person that you're talking to. But a lot of times people do things from a covert, undermining, under scheming type of mindset, and it shows. And that's what you were speaking about, where you have to kind of teach women their power within this dynamic and what it means to be a queen of spades, what it does mean to be a cuckoldress, what it does mean to be a mistress within a lifestyle situation. And I think that's a very important thing because a lot of people are not taught their power, and that's why I
Mm.
think a lot of black people have a bad taste in their mouth about it, because it's like, how am I supposed to get into this when I'm always a submissive? What if I am a dominant person? How can I be dominant when there is no portrayal of a dominant role out there for me? And that's why, again, at the BNWO, uplifting the black woman to that level of equality sexually within interracial lust is so important, because it opens the door for so many more dynamics, right? What's hotter
Yeah.
than a black guy and a white woman cuckolding a white guy, a black man and a black woman cuckolding a white woman and a white guy? That's the
Amen.
only thing hotter, you know?
Literally.
And
Mhm.
that for so many people, that's hard to do because you're not making space for the black goddess queen. You're not making space for her to feel safe. You're not making space for her to feel valued and appreciated. And maybe if she does want to feel humiliated, degraded, it has to be done a certain type of way. And again, that's another check and balance that we have to do, because black men that have immediately ran to the BNWO lifestyle and kind of left the black woman behind, we have some accountability to take into account, and we have to rectify that. That way, there can be more space for black women and black LGBTQ community members to feel safe within a interracial play space.
Absolutely. Yeah, and again, women realizing their power, men realizing their power, and understanding that if there's something you don't like, you can change it. You create your own world, you create your own space, and your sexual or kinky experiences are not dictated by some overprivileged, self-obsessed white submissive. Like,
Right.
absolutely not.
Right.
And and to that point, women that are either identifying as QoS or, in the lifestyle in some way, whether as a cuckoldress or, I'm a QoS Dom first. I'm nobody's hot wife. My partner is a black king and we run everything together, and I don't have intimate relationships with white submissives. So I don't necessarily care what they want. I'm going to dictate to them. And that's what any Dom will say, that I'm in control of this space. If you want to submit to me, I'm creating the space. It's not based around you or your fantasies or what you want. So, women that identify as QoS also have a very big responsibility to realize that they need to be honest when they want to submit to black queens as well or interact with black queens as well. It's like, you don't need permission from the cuckold or from the, white male
Right.
submissive.
Right.
You know what I mean? Do what's natural to you because again, going back to it, these submissive and it's not just white. I mean, it's primarily white males, but they could be Asian, they could be whatever, I get a lot of guys, "Oh, I'm a beta too." And it's like, "Yes, you are." But, you know, just that whole reclaiming of the woman realizing their power, their shared power as, a black queen and a QoS, like realizing like we dictate the space. We create the world. We don't need permission from anybody to do anything any sort of way. And that the submissive male is if he's in the correct submissive mindset, he's going to respect and yield to whatever he's told. No, this is the way it is. This is what's right. This is what we like. This is what we respond to. And it's very dangerous, that there's a lot of these guys out there that they do want to top from the bottom. They are not in any way respectful of the consent and, just how much vulnerability you need to have a real conversation about, hey, this is my fantasy. What do you think about it? How do you see
Right.
yourself in it? I saw an article recently about, I think it was in Singapore, but these guys that met on a forum and they all drugged their wives to sleep with each other's wives because a couple of them had approached their wives about, I want you to cuckold me. I want you to sleep with another man and I want to watch and this and that. And the wives were like, I'm not into that, which is their right to say they're
Right.
not into
Exactly.
that. But, there's also the element of, and, there's a lot of amazing women that I've talked to, Salacious Scarlett being one of them, that just
To
so
Scarlet.
focused on, the approach that you have about any kink, especially cuckolding, is imperative. So if, the woman feels like this doesn't even have anything to do with me, I might as well be some blow up doll that you throw on the bed. You don't actually care about the experience from my perspective or what I want or what would turn me on or what I'm into. And you just want to use me to get your fantasy fulfilled. That's already that's not a submissive, that's not even somebody who respects women or respects autonomy or respects, of course, consent. So there's a lot of really interesting things at play that you have to always be conscientious of. And, we could also talk a little bit about, I know that there's a lot of aversion to, not, I don't want to say the BNWO, but there's a lot of aversion to the issue of the fetishization because a lot of black women feel like, oh, well, BNWO, that's all about BBC. And they're
Mhm.
saying that because there's been too many years of content being made by white submissives, creating captions, porn that's made by companies run by white guys. So they're just, big black dick, big black, that's all they're just pushing that and, feeling like, why would I want to be a part of that? Why would I
Right.
support that? Where do I stand when that's all that it's about? You know what I mean? And it's that's definitely um an issue that needs to be acknowledged. But again, it comes back to if you don't like something, change it. You know,
That's what
eh,
we're doing. Um,
realize that you can reclaim the space for yourself.
exactly. That is a big issue, and again, one of the forefronts that we made a staple on is also again depicting the black woman in that same light, right? Again, not just making it about the sexual body, but making it
Hmm.
about the actual identity of a black woman, whether that black woman be submissive, whether that black woman be dominant, switch, alpha submissive, however you identify, you have a certain power about you as a black woman. And so many times it's not highlighted, especially in a way that puts you in the highest of lights. And then also again, from a more submissive standpoint, not everything has been catered to you as a black submissive, right? And there are a lot of black women that identify as that and that naturally enjoy that role. But if you look at some of the content that is out there that also gets associated with BNWO captions, it doesn't look as if it's something that you would necessarily want to enjoy, right?
Hmm.
Stuff like ghetto gaggers usually gets brought up a lot. And that's a very controversial site for a lot of reasons, right? Or you will see kind of like the stuff on DF where it's like the Confederate flag gangbang and all these other
Mm,
things, right?
right.
And for some black women, they do have that kink. Like there are some black women that are into the Confederate flag thing or into a white man being dominant. We're not saying that that is not appropriate. We're not saying that that's right or wrong. That's their choice. In our order, we are strictly making sure that we are emphasizing that black is superior first.
Hmm.
So whether or not you are a black male or female, submissive or dom, you're always superior to the white servitude in the BNWO. That's just how we have done things. That's what we are building this on. And that gives you a little bit of space of freedom to say, I can operate within both. I can be a dom and I can be a sub. I can sub to a black god king. I can sub to a black goddess queen. I can sub to a omni unbound ruler or a transgender, a non-binary, a non-gender conforming person, um,
Hmm.
or I can be a dominant to someone in the white servitude or the white inferiority. And the beautiful thing about that is you always have the choice. You always have the power. And so many times with black women, especially within adult entertainment, they have to fight so hard for that power. And that's why having Saint Sarah at the forefront is such a beautiful thing because she's a black goddess queen that has essentially just kind of like carved out her own role, her own space in everything that she's done. And it's inspirational, right? We call her the divine saint because she is awe inspiring, right? But she's doing it
Absolutely.
from a place of truly just trying to help all black people, especially black women. And for us as black men, the black god kings that support her, our job is simply to protect her and also revere her respectfully, but also she shows that respect in how she will be submissive to us in certain aspects. So it's a beautiful union, it's a beautiful dynamic and balance that essentially is what black culture has been predicated on from the very beginning. Like if you look at some of the symbolisms in Africa from stuff like the Ankh to the Swahili sign. Like everything is about balance. Everything is about both male and female coming together to create something greater. And I think one thing that you spoke about earlier with the white patriarchy and the white supremacy was dismantling that at its core. That way we are
Hmm.
just warring with each other. And this is why BNWO is so important to me and powerful to me is because we're really unifying black people in a way that a lot of people never thought would be able to happen. Like when I tell people about the dynamic that I have with my black sub, who is a black male, they're all like shocked because they're like, "How does this even work? Like, you're straight, he's not." Like, it's always bewilderment. But the beautiful thing about it is when I sit down and I explain it to the people that are willing to listen, they're like, "Wow, this is really cool."
Right.
And even more so, shout out to my eunuch, my triple B. I love you, my boy. He's been so he's grown so much during this process of getting to know him, and he's grateful for the space of just feeling comfortable like this around a straight black man.
Mhm.
And that to me is a beautiful thing. Like we're really slowly eroding and eliminating that stigma of, if I'm straight, I can't hang out with you because you're gay, or I
Mhm.
can't listen to you because you're gay, or if I'm gay, you can't hang out with me because you're straight.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of homophobia within my community, and we're slowly but surely eradicating that. We're slowly but surely removing that. Are we saying that everybody is now all peaches and rainbows? No. What
No.
we are saying is that there's more respect now for people that choose to go about things their own way, and we don't have to belittle people for that. Another thing for me too is making space for black women to enjoy being more of that bloody side of themselves. If you do enjoy being with multiple men at once, you should be able to say that proudly. You shouldn't be vilified for that by other black women, by other black men, especially. And that's like the main thing. Again, destigmatizing the uniqueness of black sexuality, person by person. And hopefully we can do that. It's happening before my eyes. I know that we can, but on the scale that I would like to see it happen, that's something I'm hoping to do.
That's beautiful. I love that. Yeah, the just realizing that there's been such an influence of the toxic, white supremacy beliefs, white supremacy systems that have tried to, like you're saying, put people out, even within a community, battling with each other, men and women, homosexual men or women versus heterosexual men or women, and realizing that somebody being comfortable and confident in themselves and knowing who they are does not compromise your own identity, does not compromise you loving and knowing yourself at all. And of course, also realizing that, like, in Black culture, way, way, way back, there was no fear of strong women, fear of women knowing themselves, that there is that balance of different people bringing different things to society, to culture. And, it just really does feel like it's the toxicity from this white male fragility system that has tried to pin everybody against each other instead of being able to have everybody coming together and being more powerful for it. That's definitely, because I just think that people don't want to, like, for instance, white people specifically, tend to have a hard time rationalizing with their guilt because they feel like, well, if I have to talk about the influence of these oppressive systems, that must mean that I'm a piece of shit. And it's like, you don't have to be. You
Right.
don't have to be.
Exactly.
You know
The
what I'm
more
saying?
you choose not to talk about it.
But you can't ignore centuries of influence, certainly centuries of oppression, and what that does to people understanding, who they are, who they're allowed to be. We do live in this society that's also trying to be, Puritan based, and religion brought racism over here with it. So, we have to talk about these things because it wasn't even that long ago. And how has that filtered into our society? How is that filtered into culture? How is that filtered into the culture of, different groups, and how they relate to each other and identify? So, it's people get mad at me because, again, white people especially feel like they should just be left alone with their fantasies. And this is my fantasy time. I don't want to talk about politics, or I don't want to talk about social implications. I don't want to talk about my accountability or my responsibilities. But there's also, for as many people that are reluctant to those conversations, there's a lot of people looking to better understand themselves, their power, the influence that they could have, and how to be, not just a better submissive but a better person. Because I,
Yeah.
truly respect that, and I share this belief that, especially as a dominant, you should want your submissives to be better people. I mean, there's certainly a lot of, and again, I'm not kink shaming, but there's a lot of kinks that, like, um like a lot of the home wrecking kind of things, and some real extreme like findom things where you're having the guy send, especially somebody who doesn't maybe have a lot of money, having him send to his last dollar. And I've seen, like, guys having to, like, move out of their apartment because
Yeah, yeah. It can't get
you know
extreme.
what I mean.
It can't
And
get
that's,
extreme.
and it's like, okay, well, that's an example of it translating from just a kink play situation to real life situation, or a black, obviously a lot of the blackmail issues. I recently saw an article about um the problematic elements of that, where these guys were trying to fight back to get their money back, and the women being like, this was a consensual interaction. But where do you draw that line, when there are real life implications of your kink play? Where do you draw that line? So I don't think that you know anything that what I'm doing to try and elevate what being a QoS means change. I don't think that that should be a surprise, because there are so many real life, real world implications of your fantasy play that you think that you're just putting over here, and oh, it's just
Right, in
by
this little
itself
corner.
in this little corner, and I can just go into it and play and then come back out of it. It's like everything's related. You can't, that's,
Right.
it's kind of ridiculous. And,
And
I just,
to speak on that,
yeah.
I think the interesting thing about that is like that really does kind of like explain white privilege, right? It's like I get
Right.
to pick and choose when I get to talk about these issues, when these issues matter, when these issues are even prevalent. And again, that's something that we have to deal with. That's the way that the world is working right now. But with that, you also have the privilege of experiencing what you want to experience on the terms of the people that you want to experience it with.
Mhm.
And so for the people that are kind of like window shoppers, I call them kink window shoppers or tourists. You're
Mhm.
just kind of coming in to experience the pleasure, have the fun, and get out, right? You don't really need the aftercare. You don't need the maybe even the warm up for the scenario, right? You just kind of want to get your fix and you want to get out. We live in a very microwave based society. Everything is
Right.
instantaneous. Nobody likes to
Everyone
wait for
wants
anything.
instant oatmeal. Yeah. Right.
Right, ironically enough, you would think that men in that can't have sexual stamina would thrive in this era, but that's the one thing that's tried and true. Going to take some while for a woman to get her orgasm, and you can't come quickly with that. Um, but the beautiful thing about all this is that when you do kind of learn how to slow things down, especially within kink, you learn how to enjoy it so much more, right? You learn how to enjoy the process. You learn how to enjoy the gratification of finally getting what you want, and then you even learn how to enjoy the aftercare. But I do think that there needs to be a balance with everything, especially when you're in that position of dominant, like you were saying with Findom or some of the blackmail stuff. That can go very left very quickly. And this is why,
Mhm.
like, for me, consent is a big thing. I'm not going to overstep a boundary that we've set because I don't want to do harm. But that's always been my intention, is never to harm anybody. It's only to uplift and elevate in some way, shape, or form. And unfortunately, just like anything else, there are people that don't have that intention. There are people that are very selfish. There are people
Mhm.
that are very predatory, very advantageous, especially when it comes to the expense of other people. So from
Mhm.
there, it really just depends on what type of person are you. I feel that even going into the Queen of Spades thing, I know that you want to talk about that, so I think this is like a perfect segue, if you don't
Yeah.
mind.
Please.
Um, there are women who use that title and live that title in a very positive and uplifting light, like yourself, like Scarlett, Salacious Scarlett. Shout to another amazing sub that I have. I love her to death. Um, you guys, in my opinion, exemplify what a Queen of Spades should be. Someone not just focused on the sexual gratification that you get from black men or the financial gratification that you can get from being with black men, but you're
Mhm.
actively out here trying to show white men and white women a better way of doing so, a better way of interacting with not just black men, but also black women. And I think that's a very important thing because you guys don't have intention to harm anybody. I know it might seem like that from people that aren't educated, but for
Mhm.
people that are, and I've always told you, I've followed you for a very long time. I've seen your growth, right? And I've seen where you started from, and you've always been on the same accord of I'm submissive to black superiority.
Mhm.
If I'm being honest, you were BNWO before I was kind of like into BNWO, right? Um, but you exemplify what a Queen of Spades is, in my opinion. And the elite Queen of Spades are always trying to uplift and empower black superiority, in my opinion. For those of for those people who are problematic, just like there are bulls that are problematic, right? Or people who identify as bulls. Um, when you're doing things with malintent, it will always show, and your reputation will precede you. So I think that the stigma that a lot of the Queen of Spades have gotten recently is because of people that are infiltrators, people that are
Mhm.
just using the term to get a quick buck. And again, I get it. At the same time, for those people who are really living this lifestyle, you're making it hard for them to articulate what it really is that they are doing. And I can relate to that as a kinkster because there's always some type of misunderstanding, there's always some type of stigma or vilification or demonization that we have to deal with. And I was saying this earlier, a lot of times vanilla people are the more scrutinous, sorry, not scrutinous, but the people that are actually the more vile, right, of the two.
Mhm.
There's
Mhm.
less respect, there's less consideration, there's less respect of boundaries. And
They're less
again, is
comfortable with themselves, right? So it's
agreed.
like they're perpetuating boundaries that they're not even, creating in their own mind. They're, just
Right,
pulling
right.
something, oh, this is how it should be or something, because again, even the term Queen of Spades, who came up with that? It wasn't empowered women that knew that they should be in control in the cuckold dynamic. It was women going along with, oh, my husband wants me to fuck other men, so I guess I'll do that. And he calls me a Queen of Spades, so I guess that's what I am,
I love
you
black
know?
men. And again,
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that, in my opinion, because again, it created something that now can unify women all over the globe that have an attraction to black men, that have
Mhm.
a submissive attraction to black men, and a dominant attraction to white men. That's something that all women can come together on. And again, for the patriarchy, that is a very scary thought. I think
Yeah.
that's why, like you were saying with religion, I've always thought that religion is a very problematic thing that people don't want to address. Why? That's because it makes you look at the vilification of the female body and female sexuality on that grand scheme that a lot of people agree to. And again, there's nothing wrong with religion. Anything can be a religion. Anything that you practice on a daily basis can be a religion. So
Yeah.
for athletes, they religiously work out, they religiously practice. That is their religion, being physically active.
Mhm.
For people who are in the lifestyle, I religiously pray to or I religiously show service to my Dom. That is something that can be considered a religion to you. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just think that for a lot of the implications that people force upon other people, and that's always been my big thing. I'm not a tyrant. I don't need to force anything onto you. And domination is usually shown as force. I think it's um, more so about showing a person that their choice is they want to submit. To me,
Yeah.
that's domination, right? I don't
Absolutely.
have to
Choosing to
prove anything
submit.
to
Of
you,
course.
you
Exactly.
know? And I think that's usually a problem with a lot of white inferiority is because they feel like they have to force it upon people. Like, you
Mhm.
have to submit to me. I have to be the one in charge. Because maybe
Mhm.
they've never had power. Maybe, even though as a white man you have access to all these resources that do make you feel powerful, I think that is an interesting paradox for a lot of people. You have all of this available to you, but you still feel as if you don't have power. And that's why you fight so hard for it. And then going into what you said about white guilt, because I am a predator of white guilt. I am an apex predator of white guilt. I love it.
So
Um,
hot. I love that.
but one instance that I had with a submissive that was talking to me through Night Flirt, he had to explain to me his confliction of, I find black men superior. It's not just a sexual thing for me, right? And he was very conflicted about this. He was
Mhm.
conflicted about his attraction. He was conflicted about his feelings. He was conflicted about his desire to want to serve. And, after maybe about an hour of talking to him, um, finally we got to a point where it's like, he was able to go off and enjoy himself. He told me the next day that he cried when he came because we had gotten him to a point where he was just completely honest about everything. No
Mhm.
holding back, no reservations. Everything that he truly, you know, desired to say, he was able to say, and it felt so good for him to finally have that true unrepressed orgasm that he cried. And to me, that will always stick with me because it's not about him getting an orgasm. It's about him having a feeling of freedom through something that he struggled with all his life.
Yeah. And
And to
being
me,
honest
that's
with
why
himself and living in that
exactly
truth.
living in
Because
that
again,
truth.
the better subs are the ones, like the ones that are more properly minded about why they want to submit to and serve black superiors, are the ones who are not thinking about sucking black dick. The
Pretty
ones
much.
who it
Pretty much.
is so much bigger than that to them. And, obviously you and I have both talked to submissives across the board, but the ones that I actually will feel like, I can connect to, really, put some energy into the conversation, trying to help them, discover themselves, are the ones that are trying to be like, how can I actually genuinely show true submission, true service, really pay pay it forward in terms of the financial abilities that I have, and that I didn't earn, but that I've been given as a white man. What can I do with this? Because I am not a gay man, and I don't want to pretend like being a sissy is somehow being so submissive to black superiority. It's like you're just thinking about yourself in some type of sexual gratification, when you're thinking about it that way. You're not talking about serving black supremacy. And that's, it's definitely going back to, that's a lot of, women like HOA Python, an amazing black queen that I work with in House of Anaconda. She gets really frustrated when, and I've helped her understand that Twitter's full of crap. There's a lot of
Right.
losers out there that just are, they're not going to respect you any more than anybody else. But
Anybody else? Yeah.
that whole, they're just thinking about what they're thinking about, whether it's, being a sissy for BBC or whatever, and they're trying to get you to facilitate that fantasy for them. Because there's also something that's important to realize about, particularly the QoS thing, where we deal with these proxy cucks who know that if they try to actually submit to a black superior, man, female, trans, etc., that they're actually submitting to a black superior, and the standards are going to be set out the gate
Right.
for how they need to actually address them, behave within that sphere, how they want to see them submit to black supremacy. But they feel, because of this privilege that they've had for so long, that they have power over white women and can top from the bottom easily with white women and just get their fantasy from, about black superiors the way they want to think about it through this white woman. And that's why, there's subs that either gravitate to me, and the fact that I'm trying to have them be more conscientious of these things. They either love or hate me, because I'm not going to just allow them, to use me as a vehicle for their problematic fantasies. And but that's, I think, a huge issue, is that they think that they can top from the bottom with white women identifying as QoS. Um, and, especially feeling like a lot of hot wives are still submissive, to their husbands. So they want to emanate that type of dynamic. But
Right.
realize if they actually submit to black superiors, they have to actually accept that reality that, like, I want to submit to a black superior. What's that going to look like? Versus just
Also, what might it
manipulating a
cost
white
me?
woman. Yeah,
Yeah.
that
Also,
too.
what might it cost me? And that's a real
Financially
thing.
and identity wise. Yeah.
Right, on so many different levels, and I think the beautiful thing about this all is that we get to strip down a lot of the reservations that people have. Whether that's you being in a gangbang, you being in a cuckolding situation, you being forced to not even be in the room while things are going
Hmm.
down. Right, you have to learn how to one submit to your own desires truly, and that's one thing that I try to work on with anyone that comes in contact with me is what do you truly desire. Right? If you're only scratching that itch on the surface level, it's always going to itch. We got to get down to the bottom of it.
Absolutely.
And when you're dealing with this frail, egotistical thing that a lot of white men and also black men, right? Because that's another thing that I'm very big on is that with the BNWO, it's not just all black is good. We're making
Hmm.
sure that we're holding all black people accountable. So there are a lot of black men that go along the same type of route of being manipulative, being secretive, and trying to make black women seem as if they are less than because you're supposed to be submissive. Um, so we're always conscious of the perception of people coming together and people uniting based on we want you to feel safe, we want you to feel good, but also we want you to understand that it's not the traditional way of everything that has been put out there beforehand. So
Mhm.
now you can be a black woman who is submissive to a black man, or you can be a black woman who's submissive to no one and still
Right.
garner the same respect, still garner the same love, still garner the same appreciation. And that just makes everyone feel more empowered. Also, one thing that I always want to make sure that we're clear on is that the BNWO is for black and all black identifying people of color,
Right.
because the black experience isn't just about being directly related to your heritage, being just from Africa, right? There are black people all over the world, and sometimes they
Mhm.
don't identify as African, right? But we all identify as black in some way, shape, or form. So we all share some type of experience, and bringing all that together now allows us even more room to grow, learn about each other, learn about some of the customs of other cultures that we might identify with, that we might even have within our heritage, and how to adopt that. I think one thing that I'm learning about the Native American uh, culture is that they were already kind of on the issue of non-binaryism, right? And if I'm
Yes.
misusing that terminology, then please excuse me for the people that are listening. But just being aware of that type of consciousness
Mhm.
is very important to me, because again, if we're all trying to come together and be united, why would I scrutinize you for saying like I don't have a gender identity? Before, when I was less open-minded and only focused on the sex, that's all I was caring about. Like, oh, if you're into this, you're into this. I was very adverse to having these conversations. But now again, for me, it's about the connection that you make with people, and especially when you're online dealing with the internet vermin, the website parasites, the cyberspace rodents, as I like to call them. um they're all there for a reason. They just want to get off, and they want to get off quickly.
Right.
And yeah, to them, the fair exchange of flesh is going to equate in something valuable. It's like I'm giving to you. It's very like Thanksgiving. Ironically enough, I was just talking about Native Americans, right? But it's very
Mhm.
much like that Thanksgiving trope of like, hey, I'm going to give you this, and you should give me something equally as valuable back because we're the same. But you don't
Right.
think that we're the same. So you're technically
Right.
trying to underhandedly give me a praise or give me something that's supposed to be this gift. And again, it speaks to that white privilege. I'm not mad at it. I understand it. The thing for me is now educating other black people about about ways to handle it and how to address it. So like you were saying, from a dominant perspective, and now I have so many different people asking me like, hey, how do I get into this? How do I do what you do? And I just tell them, one, join the BNWO, and I will show you personally how to do that. And people can join. Quick plug by joining the website, theblacknewworldorder.com. Once you guys do, we will go through a screening process and make sure that you are worthy of being in the BNWO, and we will get you going. But the most important thing is that when learning that about your dominance or about your ability to be stern on your stance, it automatically eliminates all the bullshit that you have to deal with, whether you're a man, woman, black, white, whoever it is. And there are just so many people that feel that with the rhetoric that has been put out about BNWO, about bulls specifically, is that everybody's just horny, looking to fuck, looking to get their dick sucked,
Mhm.
sissy holes and all this other stuff. I don't want to get too graphic because I know this is going somewhere. So sorry about the editing. I apologize.
No, you're fine. It's real talk. You got to put it out
No,
there,
you gotta put it out there, right? The
Yeah.
thing is, and I've said this before on a lot of my lives, that doesn't equate to what we determine as valuable. And especially, okay, cool. I'm just making sure, Rack. I'm just making sure. That's my guy. But yeah, we make sure that we determine what we find as valuable. and we don't find a lot of black people don't find white flesh, especially from white boys, valuable,
Right.
right? If there's no attraction there, there's no attraction there. So if you want to be of service, you have to serve in another way. That's most likely going to be something financial. That's most likely going to be something physical. That's most likely going to be something of servitude that doesn't benefit you. The benefit is you being of service.
Right.
And when people start understanding that concept, it's a beautiful thing because the growth that you see is just amazing. And I've had so many people now tell me like, "Yeah, I've got me a couple of subs now. I got me a couple of, pay pigs. I've got me," and it's like, "Yes, I want this for everybody because there's
Exactly.
enough for everyone." Like if we're really thinking about it from a financial standpoint, since most of the wealth is controlled by white supremacy, white patriarchy, you guys have enough money to spare.
That's
So
right.
you're not really losing that much, you know what I mean? And that also helps empower the black community because now financially some people don't have to go into survival mode. Some people don't have to go into precarious situations that are detrimental to them later on down the line for whatever reason, health wise, physical safety, financial safety, reputational safety, right? All
Mhm.
these different things, they don't have to now compromise their morals because now they're in a little bit more of a better financial situation. Am I saying that everyone's going to be rich off of the BNWO? Yeah, I am saying that. You want to know
Yeah.
why? Because there are white servitude, white inferiority that want to make that happen. And
Yeah.
that's part of the white privilege that benefits is that you have access to some of the resources that are needed for the black community, especially the BNWO, to move forward. And if we can start paving the way in that kink space, then it will trickle down into everything else. Because I don't know about you guys, but I'm seeing the influence of BDSM and kink in mainstream so much more than before. So
Yeah.
that's why it's also important for me to make sure that the BNWO is prevalent, is run a certain type of way, because we want to reintroduce black kink to the masses on the
Mhm.
terms of black people. You know what I mean? I don't really remember 50 Shades of Grey, but that's not black kink.
It was, yeah, no, it was just some white guy that was rich and had everything at his disposal. So of course he had this fancy dungeon and he could just pluck up girls and dominate
Yeah,
them. That
there
had
are black people that have access to that, but again, black kink has its own style to it. It has its own rhythm. It has its own nuance. There's a certain je ne sais quoi about that black experience that everyone kind of succumbs to. This is like the black magic or the black charisma that people just can't deny. And
yeah.
that's proven all over the world. We just do things a certain type of way that flows with everyone. And especially when it comes to kink, there is a slight difference, at least in my opinion, and I can't necessarily put a finger on it, but that feel is different. And especially for, I believe, white women that are into black men, you guys automatically feel that difference in just the way that we carry ourselves, our demeanor,
Oh
right?
yeah.
It's that natural attraction that we speak about, but also it's that natural rhythm that we invoke when we are in our sexual energy. And that's why to me the BNWO is so important because that black sexual energy is so unique. It's so unconventional in a beautiful, magical way that when it's done at its own accord, it's mesmerizing. You can't deny it. Like we look at people like Rihanna, we look at people like Beyonce, we look at people like Jasmine Sullivan, or there's so many different black women that I can name that just invoke a sexual empowerment without
Yeah.
being too off over the top. And then there are the black women that are over the top, and they still invoke that same type of magical, just like wow to them, and that's a beautiful thing. Black men do it the same way, and I think that's why racism was such a uh I think that's why racism has such a target on the black sexuality, because
Mhm.
of that power, because of that ability to draw people in. We naturally move in a way that turns people on. We see that other people, and this is why I've come up with SERP, is because there is always a stigma that Latinas and Latinos and Latinx is a very sensual, sexual, fun, vibrant culture and people, right?
Mhm.
Same thing can be said for Black people, especially when you get into like the areas of Brazil and Afro-Cuba and things like that, right? They
Mhm.
mesh so well together because it's naturally done that way. And when you get to Black people, it's usually vilified as, oh, you're being a whore, you're being a Jezebel, you're being a deadbeat dad, or whatever the case may be. No, we're just very sexual creatures. We're very sexual
Mhm.
beings if we choose to be. This isn't the case for everyone. Not all Black people are monoliths, so not all Black people identify the way that I'm articulating. But for the majority of us that choose to do this, we also do it in our own specific way, right? Impact play is going to be different between a Black Dom and a white Dom, right? Just like we're going to talk about it, it's real shit. Just like the stroke of a Black man is different from the stroke of a white man. We got a different rhythm to us.
Yeah.
That's undeniable. So I think that's why it's important for us to be able to exist in this way and also show the world Black kink, Black BDSM, Black fetish, Black lifestyle, Black alternative, all this stuff at our own accord because there's a different rhythm to it, there's a different depiction to it, there's a different imagery to it, there's a different vibe to it. And when you can truly experience that, then it's like, wow, now I really understand why I want to submit to this. Now, like I think it really explains itself for the people that want it to make sense, and for the people that don't want it to make sense, they're going to fight it. They're going to be like, "No, Black is wrong, and this is racist," and
Mhm. Yeah. But it's again that reclaiming because again, Black sexuality has been utilized by white supremacy. So there's and I'm not going to drop names, but there was somebody that we used to talk to on our Twitch, and he would is a black king, but he was very very negative, and I understood what he was trying to say, but he wasn't framing it right, so he was offending the Black queens in the chat, and that was problematic. But he was always talking down about women like Cardi B that he felt like were being too overtly sexual, and that's detrimental to the Black woman's identity, and he wasn't separating, to your point, the natural sexuality and even sensuality of the Black experience and Black culture from hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and not just in Africa, but particularly in Africa, and how learning to dance and learning to attract your partner and learning to please your partner was this natural thing, but how it's been taken, and especially out of context, and used as a marketing tool, and to create these different identities within American culture, especially to make white people money, and
right,
that was his problem. I knew that was his issue, was how Black sexuality was being
articulating
used,
it. Yeah,
especially used against um Black women, not just in the sense of like, making them support things or pay for things that didn't really necessarily help them, but also just he felt like it was detrimental to the image of the Black woman. And again, it's like you need to separate these things because there's a lot of jealousy on the book White Fragility. I could go back to a million times. There's a lot of jealousy in the white community towards the Black community, and they nobody wants to talk about that, nobody wants to be
right,
honest about that and sit with
right,
that. And
right,
that's one of the reasons why I make people uncomfortable, is because I will sit in the fact that I always felt like it was natural to yield to Black superiors. That's just a natural feeling that I've had for a very long time, and the only thing I question about it is learning more about it and what can I do to
right,
be a
right,
better
right,
ally because I'm aware of this. But, just to look at society, we want to take things from the Black experience, take things from Black talent and Black sexuality, and utilize it for white marketing, for white profit. And yeah, that is a problem. But Black
right.
sexual expression is not the problem. Traditional ways that Black people, experience being comfortable in their bodies and expressing that is not the problem. Dancing, twerking, whatever that's based from is, that's not a problem. It is just,
Right.
again, the frame of white supremacy, the frame of this white patriarchal society that's utilized that for its own gain, that is the problem. And I knew that that's what he was trying to say, this guy in the Twitch, but he wasn't, he was being too specific, and it was really offending a
Too
lot of the black
targeted,
queens that we
a
were
little
trying,
too
and we were
targeted.
trying to, yeah, because we were trying to, bring a group together to really to talk about these issues. And it's like,
Right.
again, you have to talk about it in the greater context, so as not to make somebody feel like you're going like, you're a problem, the way that you like the
Right.
music
Right.
you
Right.
like, and the
Right.
way you like to dance, and the way you like to go out, is a problem, because we're already dealing, again, I don't want to keep talking about religion, but we keep dealing with the issues of this idea that that women that are in any way doing what they
Shape, or
want to
form.
do, they don't
Hmm.
respect themselves,
Yep.
rather than
They're damned.
they're
They're bad
they're
goods.
making a
All this
choice
stuff.
for themselves, right? That they want
Right.
to do this, that they're doing what they want to do the way they want, to do it. And it's interesting. There's these podcasters, this couple, and No Jumper, and
Yeah.
it's
I know what
a
you're
white
talking
guy,
about.
and his light skin, white girlfriend,
Hmm.
and
Yep.
she has said on her podcast that she feels a little frustrated with her identity because she calls herself a feminist, that she, because she's very open about her sexuality, her lifestyle, that, she loves to be sexual, and, she's very bisexual, and she loves to have these threesomes with her husband and with other women, but but there seems to be this reluctance for her to feel just as free to play with other men if
Mm.
that's what she wants, because she doesn't want to make her husband feel emasculated by having those experiences. And I think that that's a lot to unpack, that, men feel emasculated by women feeling free to express themselves however feels natural to them. Um, it's just there's a lot of ways that we think, that we don't want to stop and think like, why do I think this? What is this being influenced by? Where is this influence coming from? Is this because I
No, it
think it's the right
definitely
thing?
is. And to speak to that a little bit, and one, thank you, Lady A, for bringing that up, and Rock, I appreciate you, articulating that. The one of the other things about the BNWO is that we're trying to establish more of a, I won't say Afrocentric, but a Afro-themed identity for Black people, right? It doesn't mean that you have to identify as African, right? Because there are Black people that only identify to the Caribbeans. There are Black people that only identify to the Americas, right? Um, we're not saying that you have to identify with these African traditions. What we're saying is there's enough room for all of our traditions to be highlighted, right? So being able to say like, hey, if you believe in Christianity, that's okay. But there are also things of maybe Islamic faith that you can learn from. There are also things from maybe
Mm,
some of these traditional African or Native American or Caribbean traditions that you can take power from, that will help you improve and
right.
not feel so stigmatized, not feel so bogged down by these rules that don't necessarily uh, do anything for you, and honestly never really were even made for you. Like Rock was
Mhm,
saying, like a lot of this stuff is forced upon us. A lot of this stuff was programmed into us in many different ways, shapes, and forms. So that's why Black culture now is so important, to be able to express our true narrative, our true intentions, our true feelings. Because before, there was never this much freedom to be able to express yourself at this level. Right. So when we look at things like music, like there was a bunch of times where the chitlin circuit was really the only way that you could be successful as a Black jazz musician. Right. But if
mm,
you were kind of, whitewashed a little bit, or you were kind of, just watered down just a bit and made palpable to the white people at that time, you were able to be successful. Maybe a little bit more of like a Little Richie, or, someone of that nature, just someone a little bit more white accepting, or someone that
mhm,
can accept that, oh, he's Black but he's got enough whiteness in him. And that's why there were a lot of Black people at the time that did the comb overs or did the straight hair, because they wanted to appeal more to what the dominant white audience. So now there's not really that requirement to appeal to that white audience now, right? And I think that's why you get a lot of the social pushback is like, we feel like we're being misrepresented. White men feel like all their superheroes are being stripped away and replaced with women. Well, guess what? They've been men for like 60 fucking years. So
Exactly.
yeah, they're
Exactly.
going to try to put a woman in Superman's outfit at some point in time. Hello, she's
Mhm.
called Superwoman, dickhead.
Yeah.
So
We were
sorry, that's
talking
the
about a
nerd.
lot of comic related
Yeah,
issues the other day and how in the comics women have been powerful and had their own identity for so long, and it's the movies that are just catching up, the mainstream,
the
showing
mainstream is
of
finally
this.
catching up to things. Yeah,
Yes.
so and that's one thing that I always argue with people is that if you really look at some of the costumes from those 60s, 70s era of comic books, like they look like a bunch of gay guys in a gay bar.
Right.
And that's not a bad thing, but
Why so
very
tight?
colorful, very right, tight, vibrant muscle shirts.
Yeah.
Traditionally, this isn't what you guys considered as cool. This wasn't considered acceptable, but as time has changed, things have become more acceptable. Same thing for a lot of things with sexuality. And I think it's only going to keep going from here, right? Once the door is open, it's pretty much hard to close it back. And I don't think that we need to. I think that we were at a point in time where there was a lot more understanding across the world when we were a little bit more sexually liberated. Again, you probably had a lot more people that were adverse, all up in arms, but now we're more civil. We can be more civil, or at least we say that we can be. So why not practice it? And again, for me, this is why the BNWO is important. Why I love it is because I can practice my kink. I can practice my love for sexual energy in a way that is conducive for me. And if you don't like it, you don't have to be a part of it. Am I saying that all white people need to be eradicated off the earth? Hell no. I love
Right.
white people. I love all people, right? Am I saying that I get a kick out of exploiting the white guilt that some or most white people have? Yeah. And if you like that type of thing, I'm the type of person that you need to talk to. And I hang out with people that are also into that same thing. So there's a great community for you to be a part of. Other than that, you have the freedom to express yourself and do whatever you want outside of this kink.
Right. Because
That
again,
that's
just
not
remember,
something bad.
go ahead. Sorry.
No, no, you're good. You're good. I'm just saying that's not something bad. That's something that we all should try to do is just respect each other's space. I'm not going to go into a football bar and then start talking about baseball. Like, oh my God, baseball is the best sport in the world. Football sucks. Why am I in a football bar?
Right.
It
Right.
just doesn't make any sense to me.
But it's also, just that we keep coming back to it, but just remembering that unless you are engaging with somebody who represents the BNWO space network, you are probably dealing with something that is perpetuated by a white submissive of some kind. Like black people are not the ones that were perpetuating this breeding kink of, breeding
Right,
out,
right, right.
oh, I want, it's a it's this cuck thing of
Oh,
like I want
fancy,
my
yeah.
wife to have a black baby and breed
Right,
me
right,
out of
right.
the gene pool. And to your point, me and my king, we exploit that, to in terms of a pay for this conversation. We'll talk about it, and I'll probably be checking you within that conversation. It's not just going to go the way you think, but that is not something that's being perpetuated by the BNWO. The BNWO is not out here talking about making white people go extinct or breeding them out or putting babies in white women. That is all these white cucky guys that are not even being truly submissive to black superiority or being submissive to the BNWO or trying to really understand what that looks like or what that means. They're just saw something that was made by another white person on Tumblr and now they're jerking off
They
to it and
took
they
it,
want to talk
yeah,
about it.
exactly. And
So,
and so for me, right, it's not that is a thing too, right? Because that's one thing that is something I've always wanted to highlight that we're going to highlight on the BNWO Frequency Cast. Um, that's a very serious conversation, right? Because
right.
especially within the black community, the absentee father is like a big conversation,
Mhm.
and especially when now we're portraying just the negative aspect, or the aspect of black men just leave their seed inside women and then they have these black babies. Like, yeah, that's black noir. That's you showing that you have like this weird existential kink about the black baby, the black body coming out of a white woman.
Right.
And again, I'm not kink shaming, but what I'm saying is with that, because again, I could kink shame it, but I'm not going to, because I want that same respect for everyone that is a part of the BNWO. We're
But
not
it's okay to
saying,
address what's problematic about it.
oh yeah,
Everyone needs to
definitely,
understand.
definitely,
We don't need to be
right,
shaming
just to
something to
preface
address
it,
why it's problematic. Yeah.
right, 100%, and to say that is because again, this is a real world problem. So if you
Mhm.
don't want politics involved in your kink, involved in your getting off, don't involve it. And if you
Right.
do, now you have to deal with the political aspect of it. So yeah, we're not putting out there that we want to eradicate the white race, that we just want a bunch of black babies being taken care of by white women. Like, I'm going to be
Right.
real, and I think I speak respectfully for the majority of black people that care about this topic, is that a white woman isn't really going to be able to raise a black child to fully understand the black experience.
Right.
That's just the
Exactly.
reality of the situation. Just like I, as a black man, could not raise an interracial child to understand the experience of a white woman. Let's say I had a mixed daughter. She's mixed with a white woman, and now I have to explain to my daughter, what the experience is of being a white woman. I don't know what that is, right?
Hmm.
As a white woman, you can't really prepare your black son or your partially black son for what he has to go through. And then also, that's another big thing that we talk about, is how at the BNWO, when we're in our kind of like our education spaces, our open conversation spaces, is how there's colorism within our
Hmm.
community, and how
Right.
sometimes the existence of being biracial alienates you from so many different groups of people that you actually are a part of, that you feel even more isolated and alone. So why would we want that to happen to more black people when we have yet to fully understand how to handle this topic, how to handle this issue? And it's something that has existed for a very long time, right? It's not
Of
something new
course.
under the sun, but now more so than ever, we have the capability to have this conversation and also have better understanding of it. And for me, again, there's certain things that are always going to be out there. The breeding kink is a kink. There are people that are into the concept of getting that cream pie, getting the breeding, being a breeder, whatever the case may be, bull seed left in the white pussy, whatever, or the white hole, whatever hole that is. That's okay as long as you're dealing with consenting adults. And I also personally feel that you're talking about the existential ramifications of doing that. What happens if you get pregnant? How are we going to handle that? That brings up
Right.
a whole nother can of worms that we're going to stay away from, at least for this conversation. But
Mm.
the
Well, it's
whole
even like
thing
with the
is,
cucks. They'll all of a sudden be in that moment where their wife's finally going to have sex with another man, and all of a sudden they're like, "Oh wait, this is real."
oh,
So
this is
that's,
real. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
again, where's that line between this is my kink and, oh, it's actually playing out
Reality.
in real life? What are the
Right.
repercussions of this?
Because what happens
Absolutely.
if she actually does want to have that encounter with that black man? Or what if she wants to have, like you were saying, like, what if she's attracted to black women and she wants to have that interaction with a black woman by herself? Again,
Yeah.
this is why BDSM and kink and fetish is so important to me, because when you do it the right way, it's a beautiful thing. When you
Mhm.
don't do it the right way, it's a nightmare. And a lot of
Mm.
people go about doing it the incorrect way. They don't learn about the culture. They don't learn about the dynamics. They don't learn about the aspects of what it means to be involved in this and the responsibilities that come with it. As a Dom, you take on a lot of responsibilities. As a sub, you agree to taking on a lot of responsibilities. And that marriage there, theoretically speaking or figuratively speaking, that is what makes it such a amazing experience. But when you eliminate those fail safes, when you eliminate those protocols for your own safety of the person that you're dealing with, it's traumatic, it's horrible, and you more than likely don't want to go about it again, at least not for a couple of years. It's almost like going through a really bad breakup,
Right. They have trust
and
issues at that point too. Yeah.
at that point too. And then they're even deeper because for a lot of people who aren't sexually confident, now they're even less sexually confident because of those traumatic
Mhm.
experiences. So it
Absolutely.
just is a never-ending cycle, in my opinion, and that's why, again, we predicate safety, we predicate inclusion based on a couple of parameters,
Mhm.
and that just ensures the safety of everybody, the comfort of everybody, and that everybody feels like they are getting what they want out of it, as opposed to it being, oh, I got shafted, or I got robbed, or I got taken advantage of. We never want that to
Mhm.
be the case in anything that we do. So again, safety first, consent first, everything else, all the fun will happen after that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even like we talked about a little bit, earlier, just you have a lot of power online when a guy, a submissive male, is talking to you while he's jerking off. He's in a very impressionable state, which is
Very
one of
vulnerable.
I was explaining this to somebody the other day actually about chastity, and that one of the reasons chastity is this tool of femdom is because it keeps somebody in that kind of weak state, like this super heightened state, and there's no post nut clarity, there's no release.
Right.
So they are a little more, like you said, impressionable, and that's a big responsibility that you're taking on, to not exploit that to a point of doing something detrimental or dangerous, either to yourself or to this person. Because at the end of the day, it has to still maintain a consensual dynamic, but there's just it's it's easy for people to be very skeptical about the interactions, because um how much can you that's like, if you're a woman having sex with a man and you try to ask him for something when he's right about to come, or so, like, and
He's
then what, hold him
gonna give it
accountable
to you.
for that the next day. That's not
I was not in the
just,
right state of mind, woman. Leave me alone.
he was gonna say anything, like, what are you talking
Vice versa for
about?
y'all. Vice versa for y'all. When
Of
y'all are right
course.
about to come, you'll agree to anything. I've
You might
seen it.
think it's particularly hot, like, in that
Yeah.
moment, to say some, I've said some wild things that are just in that moment are really getting me off, and then, you certainly don't wanna feel shame about it later, but you can reflect on it later and
Like,
be like,
I don't
"Oh,
know if I meant
that's
that.
interesting."
I don't know if
You
I
know?
meant that one. That was the heat of the moment. Let's keep it there.
Right. It's so important to, be aware that, and that's why at the end of the day, sex work is not for minors, because even if it is, and this is going into how sex work has been leaking into the mainstream in different ways now. So like the girl, a lot of doms on male and female on Twitter are like rolling their eyes at some of the TikToks that are going viral about not just femdom, but like financial domination, and this disconnect that's not explaining that it's still based in sex work. It's still based in, a sexual domination, even if it's, so now you've got younger girls that are like, "Oh, I want some loser online to pay me." And it's just like, "No, honey. No, like, this
Yeah,
is a sexual conversation. This is a, it's not for minors. It's not even for just anybody, there's
that's 100% true too.
psychological a lot of psychological, not necessarily just manipulation, but interaction going on in these
Interaction is a great way
dynamics.
to put it. And I think, speaking about that is a great thing because, we see a lot of these baby doms, right? Or people that
Yeah.
are just kind of like very new to this, and
Insta-doms, yeah.
Instadoms and all this stuff. And again, that's what happens when pop culture gets a taste of anything underground. And,
Right.
Findom has been underground for a while, but I would say within the recent 4 to 5 years, the the public eye on it has grown bigger. There have been a couple of Vice stories on there
Yep.
about financial domination. We've seen, as you see, the certain people are posting up their TikToks and their Instagram reels. So
Mhm.
eventually, it was going to get out there, right?
Yeah.
The thing for me is understanding that, like you said, this is sex work in some way, shape, or form. It is
Yep.
a sexual get off for a lot of these
Even if you're
people that
not
are
naked.
right. Even if you're not naked, even if you're
Right.
not naked, there's still sexual energy being
Mhm.
exchanged in some way, shape, or form. And
Yes.
this is not something for children. This is not something for minors. This is only for consenting adults. But even then, if you are an adult, you have to understand like you said, there's a lot of mental aspects that come into it. We were talking about the blackmail thing earlier. Like, that's something that can easily go left. That's something that can easily cause life changing and damage to people on both sides, as a dom
Mhm.
and as a sub. So again, yeah, this is not something for minors to be doing. If I will say, if you have interest in doing it when you are of the right age, being curious is something that's always going to happen. I think that all parents, all adults should try to help guide children to understand that eventually it will be their time. There's nothing
Mhm.
wrong with teaching, but I think that our reluctance to teach forces people to go find out about things on their own, and then they find out about it and it goes unchecked. And
There's a
that can be said,
laziness to the research though too. A lot of people are
of
not,
course. You
even when
just
they
find
are
what
of
you're looking for.
age,
Right.
they may
You're
have
finding
heard
what
about
you're looking for.
chastity on some podcasts that just use the topic as shock value, and now they're trying
Right.
to like I said, like,
Right.
oh, yeah, I want someone to just pay my bills and da da da, but you're not. That's a person that you're talking about that you're going to be
Right.
engaging with.
That
Like,
you're
you
still
need to
talking
do
to.
your research. You need to know what you're getting
Even though
yourself
he's a
into.
human ATM, a loser, whatever, he wants to be called, he's still a human being, right? And that's
Yeah.
one thing that I definitely enforce with all of my subs, is that after we come out of that play space, is like, hey, are you okay? Gotta I might use some very harsh language with you. I might do some very harsh physical things to you if we get into that space. Do I need to know that you're okay, because I don't want to leave you worse than you were coming in here.
Right.
I want you to
Right.
feel better. And for some people, working out, punching a punching bag so their knuckles are bleeding is therapeutic to them, right? A lot of people look at that like that's psychotic. That's, what's the word I'm looking for? Sadist and masochist. That's masochistic.
Masochist. Yeah. Oh,
Um,
yeah.
right. But
Masochistic. Yeah.
at the same time, someone getting flogged for an hour could be therapeutic for them. That could be
hmm
something that they need to decompress from a very long, stressful day, stressful week. If you're a parent, if you're head of a Fortune 500 company, there's
hmm
so many different things. So I think that, again, just erasing the stigma of sexuality, of being sexually aware, is the first step to us coming together as human beings. After that, then we can really start addressing maybe some of these social, racial, political issues. Because again, like, now sex is off the table. We're not awkwardly having that conversation about, hey, do you like sucking dick? Do you like getting your pussy ate? Do you like a finger in your butt? We're not having that awkward conversation now. It's like, oh, you do that? That's fine. I mean, I know like 20 people that are into that shit. I'm not into it, but it's cool. Now
hmm
we can really get to the nitty gritty of like really important conversations, and
Yeah.
also have a different appreciation of, hey, you're a kinky person. I'm not. I'm over here with the people that like the three position sex, and that's it. And missionary under the sheets.
Mhm. Yeah.
Great. Enjoy that. I'm
Right.
happy for you. I hope it's great missionary three position under the sheet sex. We
Right.
like to hang from ceilings over here, and we're going to
Right.
swing all day.
And if you ever want to
So
learn about it, please feel free. There
just
will be no
feel
pressure.
free.
Like you were talking about earlier, we're
Right.
not trying to pressure anybody into doing anything that we like, but the resources are there for you to find out
Exactly.
about it and see how you
Exactly.
feel about it. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well,
Exactly.
this
And
has
then you can
been.
learn about it the right way.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's,
Oh, no, this
I
is great.
think we're a little bit spoiled. There's so much information at our fingertips that we forget. You can go on YouTube these days and learn exactly how to finger a woman to full intense orgasm. Like, you know what I mean? You can find a video breaking down things step by step to just absolutely anything. So sometimes it's just that accountability of the information's out there. Let me actually go find it. Let me actually learn about what is financial domination, what is the BNWO. You just got to take the time, and if it's important enough to you, to go look it up yourself, to go not only read about it, but then to be vulnerable enough to ask questions and not be embarrassed to ask. Why be embarrassed? Look at, like
Right.
what's the worst that could happen? You be more confident and comfortable in your own skin and know what's out there if ever the desire should hit of trying something new. It's like you said, just understanding that we all want the same thing, to be seen for ourselves and what, who we feel like we are, and to respect and appreciate that. And
Yep.
whether that's, you're a white male submissive and you feel all this guilt and frustration, and why do I know I'm not a gay man, but why do I want to submit to a black man? There's no shame in having that conversation. There's no shame in exploring that, as a white woman, like, why do I want to submit so badly to a black queen? What does this mean? It might not even be sexual in nature, but I just want to obey. I want to, be at their disposal to do whatever they come up with that they could use me for. There's
And
no shame in it, and
that's
the only
all.
issue should be to feel like you're just going to deny yourself and act out, in insecurity, and that could be dangerous. That could be dangerous for everybody. So
Definitely
that's
agree. And again, like being able to bring people to that point where now we can openly have those conversations, have these questions asked. It just allows us to really understand each other more as humans, tolerate each other more, be more respectful for each other, and not be so at arms, so ready to attack and belittle and tear down. And I think that will again make things a lot easier. Again, I'm a very hopeful person when it comes to this. Is it possible that it might not work out? Yeah, that is a possibility. The world has been the way that the world has been way before I've gotten here. But I mean, if it comes to a point where we look back and say like, wow, we're way further ahead than we ever thought we would be. And I feel like we're in that generation where we've seen a lot of things that we've never thought we would see in this country and this side of the world and even in the world now. Um, Imagine what the next 50 years are going to be. I just hope that that is a place where people like us and people that aren't like us can just again come to a conclusion of I don't have to disrespect you because I'm disagreeing with you. And
absolutely.
that's my main goal.
Yeah. Well, we are so lucky to have Black kings like yourself and Black queens like Saint
Nature.
Sarah and other superiors that are working to, establish this BNWO network and culture, to really lead that transformation, to people realizing that they can make the world what they want it to be, make their world what they want it to be. And I am just so grateful that you took this time today to really, provide this insight and to answer some of my questions. It's been absolutely, a true privilege, and I would love you to be able to, any final thoughts that you have, or any plugs that you want to do, whatever, wherever you want people to follow you, if you want to take this moment now to do that.
Appreciate you. So we'll get the plugs out the way. Definitely go to the blacknewworldorder.com. That is the blacknewworldorder.com. And go sign up if you want to be a part of the society, if you want to be a part of the membership. We are dropping our hub uh, early July, early 2023. Sorry, not early July, early January 2023. And it's going to
Wonderful.
be an amazing BNWO social site that will have a lot of benefits for everyone who joins at whatever membership level that there will be, and all of that will be explained on the hub. You can follow me at Your God King Dom on all of your social media sites. Um, and just click on the link on the bios and follow me on my Telegram. That way you can get all the updates. The BNWO Frequency Cast is dropping on December 26th, the first day of Kwanzaa, and that will kind of set up what we will be talking about in 2023. Very excited to have you guys up there. Um, and just listening in. It's going to be a great take on the Black experience, both in the kink and BDSM aspect of things, and also on the online social media aspect of things. And it's going to be great to have people come in and listen. So that's pretty much it. Lady A, I love you. I appreciate you. Can't wait to do another conversation with you. We'll probably hop on the Moan
Yeah.
app at some point in time. And also have you on the BNWO Frequencies cast as well. And I mean, again, I can't wait to have another amazing conversation with you about all this fun stuff and maybe next time we'll finally give people like the nastier conversation. We usually just have like these really like educational, political stuff, but like maybe they want something a little bit more X-rated. We'll see if we'll do
We
that.
do a blend,
A
but
nice
yeah,
little
we could
blend. A nice little blend.
we could
We'll
get a
see.
little more explicit sometimes.
We'll see.
For sure. I'm sure we both have like, just endless stories that that the audience would love to hear about, but
That'll
right
be
place,
good.
right time. For
Right.
sure.
Right
I'm
place,
I'm
right
just
time.
so grateful to, be able to touch on as many different topics as we were, not just today, but anytime that I have the privilege of speaking with you. So I'm just so grateful, and definitely make sure you follow King Dom on all his media to get up to date details on not only the BNWO network, but everything King Dom has going on. And you can follow me, all my medias on, LadyAnacondaHOA.com is where you're going to want to go. Also, you can find links to different Black-owned businesses that I work with, promote, and also there's a direct link to donate to the ACLU there for all of my subs that want to make a good impression. There's plenty of resources right at your fingertips to actually show that you want to be a better ally, be a better person, be a better sub, and not be one of these problematic proxy cucks, but actually set an
Check all of
example.
y'all. We're coming to check all of y'all. The BNWO tribute starts at $100. That is the BNWO standard, whether they are in the society or not. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
That is just black superiority's just due. So if you don't have that, start saving up for it. And as well as anyone that's interested in finding out more about the BNW, again, I said, go to blacknewworldorder.com. Hit me up on any of my social media sites, and you will get all the information that you need. Lady Anaconda, as always, can't wait to have another conversation with you. We will have another one soon. The unification of the BNWO and the House of Anaconda has been a beautiful thing, and I just can't wait to continue it and all the hard work that we're doing, the beautiful work that we're doing for everyone. And yeah, some of y'all Queen of Spades, you are going to have to show your tribute and your dedication to the BNWO as well. And that's because we got to make sure that you're for real about it. You're following the example of a elite Queen of Spades when you're following Lady Anaconda, and this is one of the only Queen of Spades that I've personally vouched for. So
Right.
I appreciate you.
Defunding the defunding the white patriarchy, defunding white supremacy is the name of the game. So if you're
Definitely is.
a true elite QoS, that should be your motivation, and you should be working in alignment to better yourself, and to educate, other women and white males around you, because we can only support and elevate the Black voices of the BNWO, but at the end of the day, we have to start with educating each other as white QoS and white males. So, just absolutely looking forward to many more conversations with you, King Dom. Thank you again so much for being here. So grateful to you. And
Oh, one
make
more thing, guys. Follow us on Twitter, Serve BNWO. That's at Serve BNWO. Make sure that you are following our main media account. We will be having a whole bunch of blog posts there, and that is where you get all the information for the BNWO. So tap in with us there. Follow us on the website, theblacknewworldorder.com, and we will catch you around.
All right. Everybody, have a great night. Make sure to follow House of Anaconda on all social media so that you will be the first to know about any new interviews that I'll be having, because I am going to really be pushing, especially in the year 2023, the year of the BNWO, trying to elevate a lot of Black voices and having a lot of different creators, business owners, entrepreneurs onto the show. And make sure you follow my King Rocks page, Sound Village HOA, for everything that he'll be doing. A lot more videos, a lot more interesting content coming your way soon. So everybody stay blessed. Have a wonderful night.
And I just want to make clear the truth coming from my lips, how passionately I advocate for betas to accept their natural place, understand they'll never be able to please a woman.